Let's get it. This is Life's Essential Ingredients with Jeff and a Mike, where we hope to inform, inspire, and transform lives, one essential ingredient at a time. Welcome to the show. Listeners, we're back. It's been forever for my Pasho, the co-host, Mike Sestich. And again, if you're new, a lot of times we call each other Pasho. Way back in the day in college, we were dating some sisters, and Mike is Croatian, and Pasho means brother-in-law. So I don't want to get people confused. We've been recording a lot of episodes, probably about a month ago, and then we've been off. So I feel like we haven't done anything forever on this platform, Pasho, but it is great seeing you as usual.
Pasho, always a pleasure. And we were off for a little bit, but we did have the opportunity to hang out. Pasho came down this way to do a little bit of work. Made my week when he was down here, man. Thanks, Pasho.
Oh, yeah. Donna, I don't know if you're a fish eater or not, but my Pasho did risk his life as an Alaskan fisherman back in the day. And if we had more time, he has some incredible stories. But he went out and caught a red snapper. I was just down in LA doing some work at UCLA, and my Pasho hooked up a barbecue, and that was the best fish I've ever eaten in my life. So Donna, the first question, do you like fish?
I do like fish.
What is your favorite?
I like a lot of fish. I don't really know what my favorite is. I did some fishing for the first time when I was dating my husband. He really loves to fish. And the joke goes that once we were married, I caught what I was looking for. So I really haven't been fishing since then.
I love it. I love it. What a great way to start the show. And let me introduce our amazing guest, Donna Tashjian. She's coming to us from Grand Rapids, Michigan. You can find Donna at iVibrantLiving.com. And her email is donna@iVibrantLiving.com. And she also has an Instagram, and that's DRTASHJIAN. And that's where you can find her. And about our guest, man, we are in for a treat because I just feel like you have so much wisdom, I think is probably the best word in researching you. Donna's down-to-earth, inspirational speaker. She's been speaking and coaching for over 20 years. And in 2016, she founded Vibrant Living International. In 2019, she authored From Frazzled to Freedom, and she hosts her own podcast, You Were Designed for Greatness. She's been married to her wonderful husband, who she plucked out of the Lake Michigan and caught her prized fish possession for over 35 years. She has 3 of her own beautiful children and is grandmother to 8 fun and lively grandchildren. She loves flowers, time in nature, and like my grandma Weiss, a nice cup of tea.
It fixes everything.
Exactly. Very medicinal. But Donna's real passion and the nature that we're going to explore on this show is empowering people to reach their full potential. Donna, welcome to the show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah. So we always start with a thought of the day. And,
okay.
Not to put pressure on you, but we've recorded quite a few of these episodes now, and I'm 100%. So I guess it's more pressure on me than on you, because you can say, hey, Jeff, you're crazy off with this one. That has nothing to do with me. But in researching you and looking at the work that you do, this one just really spoke to me. So here we go. It's a quote from the great Brene Brown. Owning our story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. Embracing our vulnerabilities is risky, but not nearly as dangerous as giving up on love and belonging and joy, the experiences that make us the most vulnerable. Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light. Donna, Why would I pick that one?
That's a good one. As soon as I heard Brene Brown, I was pretty sure it was going to be great and it would resonate with my story. So that that was a really long for a quote to be able to expound on, but so much of my story is stuff that people usually want to hide and people don't want to talk about. And so when you begin to own your story, if you will, and begin to share it, it feels really scary. What I have discovered is the more that I own the story, the larger my influence has been. Than being able to help others, because then they can relate to you and it's real. So I love that quote. That's a great one.
Well, what a great statement that you just made right there. And C4 Leaders, I don't know if you're familiar, but we're a nonprofit as well out of Northern California. And Mike and I do work to help people learn how to tell their story. And we use pizza to build community and help people focus on what their life's essential ingredients are. But I love, and I think we're going to gain so much knowledge because you've been doing this work a lot longer than we have. And so I'm going to be taking notes just so you know I'm not on my phone. I'm definitely not distracted by that stuff. But when you see my head down, I'm writing because I want to learn and get better. And I love how you talked about, owning your story. And once you were able to own that, you were able to share that and have a larger influence. And then I think, I just love that statement because so many people, everybody has a story, but can we get into the space to really explore and be vulnerable? And why I picked that quote for you, because I think that's where you get your clients into that space, help them realize that empowerment comes from vulnerability. When you are in this space where you don't have anything to hide from, then you can truly live your best life. So I want to go a little bit backwards first and just kind of hear from you about what was life like, growing up. And maybe even you share what you want of, some of that darkness, some of the vulnerability challenges that you went through and allowed you to get to be in the position to share your story and then to have that influence with people now. But let's look, if you don't mind, let's look at your life growing up and what was that like?
It would be my pleasure to share that. It's a great place to start. I grew up in a blended family, and we were probably in poverty most of growing up. So there was always a feeling we had enough to eat, but man, I gleaned fields, we canned, we did all kinds of things to be able to have enough. I remember one job my father had, we had the house included, but he made $2 an hour. And so we did a lot of things to survive. So my mother brought me into this new blended family, and I inherited a father and 3 brothers through this blended family. This new dad became my daddy. He's an amazing man. And so that was a good thing that happened through that. And so growing up, I always felt somehow not really wanted or not really enough, which is I remember one day I hid under, the boys were picking on me or something, and mom just always told me to suck it up and quit crying. And so I went and hid under a bed, and it was one of those beds where the box springs were open back in the day. And I, at that time, had really curly hair. And I don't know how long I hid under there, but I wanted to see if anybody would notice if I was missing in the world. And I don't know how long I was under there, but to my little girl brain, I was under there forever and no one ever noticed. And so I was crying, and I began to cry more. And then I'm trying to get out, and my hair's getting caught in the bed. and the bed springs. I had to pull some of my hair out to actually get out, and then nobody noticed. So that was how I felt growing up. And then at the age of 14, I became pregnant. A family member hurt me, and I didn't tell anybody. And so I didn't say anything, and until I had to say something. So when my pregnancy wasn't going to be hid anymore, I had to say something. And at that point, there was a lot of shame. There was, my mother hid me from situations. So that feeling of still not enough, needing to be hid, needing to be kept secret. It was as if I was Mary and just all of a sudden pregnant. It was just, there was no discussion. There was no explanation. And to say that the next few years were hard, there aren't adjectives to describe how hard it was. So I was 18 with a 3-year-old. I'm like, to kind of get you a picture of it all. I finished high school at the age of, I was under 17, so I was still 16. I was full-time employed by 17, and I was in my own apartment by 18. And my attitude was, I'm going to prove them wrong. And the main source of my strength, I always give credit, was God. A lot of times that was all I had. There wasn't really anybody I could talk to, anybody I could relate on, but I've learned some things through that on how to overcome. I call it turning our baggage into luggage, so that we can actually be who we were created to be. We can live the life we actually loved living, and not letting our past define us. So that's a little bit about me.
Oh my goodness. Well, in researching you, none of that came out. And I knew obviously there had to be some, I'll say, inspiration to you doing the work that you do. First of all, thank you so much for sharing that. And second of all, yeah, I'm sorry that you were hurt in the way that you were hurt when you were 14. I'm sorry that you grew up, feeling like you were never enough. But in meeting you now, I know you use that as a source of strength to empower all the people that you work with now. And I think you focus on women, but I imagine you work with everybody. But yeah, your sweet spot is women, obviously from your story. And yeah, so that's why I love this show, is because we get to meet incredible people that normally our paths would not cross, and then to have your story resonate with someone else out there. And I'm reading, it's just crazy how life works out, but I'm reading an incredible book, which you probably read with your history, but it's The Body Keeps Score. I don't know if you've heard of that or not. By Bessel van der Kolk, an MD. And really he looks at healing and trauma. And if you're not familiar with that book, I would highly suggest any listeners, if you've been in a situation where you've had any sort of physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, healing from any trauma, any post-traumatic stress, this book, and I'm not done with it, but oh my gosh, Dr. van der Kolk is an incredible writer, and it's all evidence-based and really, really good insight into that. But I want to get back to you. So let's just jump in there, because I know that's a big part of what you do, and you have an upcoming training that's going to be available. And I think, does that fall under, turning your baggage into luggage? I think it was on your site, September 13th, that it's starting. Unfortunately, this show will air shortly after that. So I apologize about that, but hopefully people can listen to this and then get in on the next one. But let's have you tell the listeners, about that program, first of all, and about some of the tools that you've learned through your life that empower women to take charge of their life.
Yes, I will be doing this group regularly, and it is a coaching group that people can get involved in. And so to find out more and to see if we're a good fit, they could just contact me. So on any of the social media is fine. But I do it on a regular basis. And turning your baggage into luggage describes it. It's how to recover and to actually turn it for our good, which brings me to tool number 1 that I usually share. And I call it building my understanding superpower, or perhaps muscle. And that is the mindset or the understanding that I can use whatever happens to my benefit, that I can somehow grow and become better in adversity. So let me describe it this way. Baggage thinking is why did this happen? It's not fair, it's wrong. And everything that happened to me, that is true. But it can turn into a pity party where I am just feeling sorry for myself. And not that it wasn't wrong. It wasn't just there was nothing right about it, but as long as I continue in what I call baggage thinking, I get stuck there. And luggage thinking is I can't change the past, but I'm going to use it to grow and become and help others. It is a part of me. And so how I use that to become, I call it gifts wrapped in sandpaper. Mm-hmm. They rub us the wrong way. They hurt. They take skin off. It's like a whole thing. But somehow, no matter whoever you are that's listening today, that's in some kind of adversity, look for the gift. Look for how you can become better, to rise above the traumatic events and pains and disappointments that life throws at us. And man, have we had a lot of them recently. To use it to become better and grow. And so I have 4 steps for developing this. I'm a check mark girl, so I always have 2 steps.
I love it.
And number 1 is search for the gift. If I'm looking for a gift, I will find it. It's the beginning because what you focus on, you empower. So if I'm looking for the gift, then I will find it. So number 1 is to look for the gift. Number 2, I call quit looking at my shoes and look up. Keep a bigger picture in mind. This isn't a forever thing. Don't let these event be your whole book. Let it be a paragraph, a page, maybe a chapter. But nothing bigger than that. Look up from your feet and look up and say, what do I want to do from here? Keep a bigger picture in mind. Number 3, compassion for others. This one's hard sometimes. You don't know, you haven't walked in other people's shoes. And ultimately, when I choose to be compassionate and forgive others, I set myself free. It does not mean that what they did was right. It doesn't mean you're letting them off the hook. The person you are actually letting off the hook is you. You are no longer become chained to that pain. That's number 3. And I could do a whole episode on that one. Number 4 is get support, get help. You are not alone. That's one of the biggest things with that keeping secret stuff. You think you're the only one. And there are so many of us who have felt the same way. Get someone to help you. Get a coach. That's what I do. Get some type of support. So that's my number 1 nugget, is your understanding superpower.
Hey, Donna, first of all, thank you for sharing that story, man. That was, well, I know that's not easy to share something like that, but I had this question, and maybe someone out there, as you say, and you might answer this already, that's in the same situation that you were. If you can go back in time and you've got like a minute or two to talk to your young self to help you get through it, what is something that you would say to yourself now with all the life's wisdom that you have now?
I think it would really be number two. I had trouble with the bigger picture frame, looking at the bigger picture, because I'm surviving. There were times I didn't eat and fed my daughter. There were some real struggling times figuring out how to, your car breaks down and you have no reserves and nobody to help. All of those kind of things. And so when you're in the middle of survival, you can't think past. I remember when I first met my husband, and he would say, this is how much we will make annually in this job, kind of thing. And I go, I can't get that. Tell me how much that is a week. Because that's where my brain was, is like, I just survived this week. Don't tell me about the year. I can't think that far. And so that was one of the biggest challenges, is to look up, is to come up with a plan and to a goal of what you would actually like. And know, and so that's probably the main thing I would tell my younger self.
Yeah, and I just want to explore one other thing that you said, to maybe have you share some insight. And I know you said you're a believer, and Mike and I are as well. And this show, has love for everybody, but compassion for others, and really you're talking about forgiveness, and when we forgive, we really are forgiving ourselves, and we're setting ourselves free. And I love how you shared that simple statement, which is a very difficult thing to do. I was hoping perhaps you can walk us through what that process was, because unfortunately, which is just the craziest thing of how our brain works, and you talk about surviving and only being able to get through, really, you said a week, but I guarantee it was less than, it was probably 1 hour at a time, to be honest. Yeah. And I think when we are forced to deal with the abuse that you dealt with, our brain just shuts down. And so then once it starts thinking, unfortunately, we feel shame, which is the craziest thing in the world, because you're a 14-year-old young girl, when someone that you trusted, and usually people that suffer sexual abuse, it is someone that was in their life, like a high percentage. I think it was like plus 80, but I don't want to misquote that, but a high percentage. So it's just like, wow. Here, you are, and how long did it take to forgive yourself and to get into that space, and maybe just walk us through that process? Because I think that's probably one of the hardest things to do. And if our listeners can take that out of this episode, that's powerful.
I've had people ask me that before, and it's going back a few years now, and I don't remember how long it actually would say it took me. One of the ways I describe forgiveness when I teach it is some people think it's a one and done thing. I say I forgive them and I'm done. But what God showed me is forgiveness is like an onion. I peel a layer and I cry, I process it. And then it's like the onion goes away for a little while. I believe God in his gentleness and graciousness knows that what we can take at a time. And when things have been truly traumatic, it doesn't mean that I didn't forgive. The next time something comes up and it triggers me or reminds me, I can go a little deeper. And then it happens again. And so to me, forgiveness is a lifestyle, not a one and done. And I had something about 4 years ago come up again, and then I was mad, and I'm like, it's been 40 years. Like, why is this coming up again? And it wasn't forgiveness. It was more just emotions from that young girl and thinking and remembering things. But it was God giving me a new level of freedom. When that happened, this story got even stronger and I was able to share it even more. Yeah. So to me, God in his graciousness walks it through it. So that's the first thing, is don't think that it's forever. The other thing is, if I start to cry, I might never stop. So I just have to, I'm okay. I'm fine. And remember, that's one of the reasons why I think God gave me the analogy of the onion is that it helps to know that there's a little bit at a time. It'll be okay. The couple of things about forgiveness is it's an act of your will, not your emotions, especially for women. Probably guys too, but I can relate more to the girls. Is I don't have to feel all mushy and gushy toward this person to forgive them. So forgiveness is a choice. It's an act of my will. I choose to let that offense go and not hold me anymore. And so to me, that I've had people say, well, I say I forgive and I don't feel it. I feel hypocritical. And they deserve to be punished. Well, maybe they do. It's very likely that there should be some kind of thing happen. But learning that it's not my responsibility, that people actually reap what they sow. And if I sow unforgiveness, I'm going to reap a crop I don't want. And it doesn't mean that I'm saying it was okay. It doesn't mean that I'm saying that it was right or fair or any of those things. It's a choice of my will that I don't want to be held captive to that event. It's no longer am I going to be a victim, but I'm going to be a victor. I said to somebody once, because I used to get called being a crybaby because I'm a sensitive girl, and my brothers would pick on me to see if they could get me to cry. And I said to someone in my adult years when I was crying, I looked at them in the eye and go, don't mistake these tears for weakness. It just means I'm passionate about whatever we're talking about. So tears aren't a sign of weakness. They're a sign of healing and passion. And so don't be afraid to cry and just choose to forgive.
I love that. Well, I'm glad you shared that too, because I'm a huge crier, but I love experiencing all that life has in store for us. And my profession for 29 years was a registered nurse, and so living in space where you're dealing with life and death, and I think if you can really immerse yourself in that you kind of have to have a lot of joy and happiness and sadness and sorrow as well. And a word that keeps jumping into mind when you're talking about forgiveness is just surrender.
Yes.
And I like that word, because you're not giving up, you're not turning in. You just say, you know what, I'm going to make a different choice. And you've just, shared that. So thank you so much for walking the listeners through some potential ways for them to make the choice to surrender and to start to heal from some things that they've been perhaps carrying. I want to get into, did you have something else?
Yeah, one thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned surrender. And so when I think of surrender, people mistake it for giving up. And that's not what either one of us mean. And so surrender to me is I'm surrendering the expectations of what I thought was going to be my teenage years. I'm surrendering what I thought it was going to turn out like, and then look for the gift in it all. And so learning to surrender our disappointments and our expectations, learning how to handle the disappointments of life is one of the greatest gifts we can ever have. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of them sometimes. Things don't turn out the way we think. And so to me, surrendering all of that, and for me, it was surrendering that God had something better in store. And I have, as of this year, been married 37 years. So there is more good in store.
Oh man, that just makes me feel so great. Mike and I are close, not that far. I'm coming up on 27. October 1st. And Pasho, you're coming up on 26. I put him on the spot.
I'm on mute. Wait,
Yeah.
is my wife listening to this? Oh yeah, 26. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I want to get in. Let's shake it up a little bit, because I know I'm just going to ask you, why did you choose to be a nonprofit versus, a sole proprietor or LLC? And what was that all about?
I always knew that I had, I don't know how else to say it, so I'll just say it this way. Something God was calling me to, always. I've known that from a pretty young age. I always were sitting with women, and it seemed I was helping women with capabilities of life that I hadn't experienced yet. They would be much older than me. And so it was something I was always doing. My youngest daughter goes, "Mom, there was always women sitting on the couch crying." And I didn't know that was a memory of hers until she told me. So I always knew that there was something that I was supposed to do. But in a lot of my situations, being a woman did not give me that liberty to be able to do what I felt like I was called to do. And so I founded Vibrant Living at first, thinking it was going to be a sole corp or an LLC. And I began to I continue to seek out coaches and trainers and mentors for me to continue to grow as well. And one of them were some friends who I've had for years. And they said, "Donna, you should be ordained. You are a minister and you need to be recognized as for what you are doing and the impact you're making in the world." And so when I became ordained, then Vibrant Living became a nonprofit, and that is the ministry that I work in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's not all the way reflected, at least on your website. So I was kind of curious about how you, so that's very interesting. Very cool. Thank you very much for sharing that. I want to get into, I know part of what you do, you take people not on your couch now, but you take them to have different meeting places. What are those meetings like? Your Vibrant Women kind of community, and really they're just where you're just sitting down and sharing it and coaching each other up. But walk the listeners through what perhaps that meeting looks like.
Well, Vibrant Women is a community of women online and locally. We meet locally just to get together and build community. My Vibrant Women Facebook group is solely is focused on helping women rise above the pain of the past and build that kind of community so that you don't feel like you're alone with all of that. And when I work with people in Vibrant Women or Vibrant Living, it is in one-on-one and group coaching. And so when I meet people through Vibrant Women that are in need and they want to have some further help, I offer them the resources that we have available.
That's great. Not to get too personal, but since you're a nonprofit, do you guys have grants and things that perhaps make coaching? Because I know that's been such a popular thing historically, but it seems like there's so many coaches out there now. But yeah, maybe share how you're structured.
There is recommended investments that people would make for the different programs that we have, but we haven't received grants, but we have donors who have, and so we create scholarships available for people depending upon where they are. So if they're a good fit for the program, we work with people wherever they are.
I love that. I love that. Well, let's get into some of the other amazing things that you're doing. Maybe your life by design seems interesting. What does that mean? Yeah.
This is a newer one that I have begun to work on under 2 years. So it's in a newer program, and it is called Life by Design, Not by Default. Most of us think that we get to experience life by whatever it throws me, instead of actually designing the life you would like. And the premise is developing our spiritual intelligence. We hear a lot about our emotional intelligence, but very few people are talking about our spiritual intelligence from a biblical faith-based perspective. And the scripture that I began this whole study on started almost 15 years ago. And it is in 2 Corinthians 4:8, and it says, the things that are unseen are eternal, and the things that are seen are temporary. Mm. And so how do we live from our spirit? Because we are a spirit living in a body, having a human experience. Mm. We are, and so how do I live from that eternal perspective? How do I learn to use the gifts and the talents that God's placed in me? How do we use the laws of the Spirit to be able to live and actually co-labor with God to transform our own life and those around us? That's what Life by Design is about.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah, how much time in Life by Design do you encourage people? Obviously, they're surrounded by scripture, but do you encourage people just to sit and learn to listen to their heart and soul? You know,
absolutely.
How would you encourage somebody that's just so, because it sounds so simple, but life is coming at us from so many different ways. And how do you teach someone to get comfortable into that space of doing nothing so they can learn to appreciate doing nothing and then hear what they need to hear, but not an easy thing to do?
A couple years ago, God spoke to me the scripture, be still and know that I am God. And as I said, this has been going on for a couple years. So this was another component of that. And I remember the attitude I said, I'm going to prove them wrong. Mm-hmm. Well, that attitude can make you be an overworker. You know, it's like I constantly got to, I'm a list maker. I'm a to-do. Let's get it off. Let's get it done. Let's move and work all the time. My coaches always say, Donna, what are you doing for fun? And I'm like, I'm working. And so God was saying, be still. And I'm like, I can't be still. And I heard my mom's voice, that's lazy. And so, and he said, I know you feel that way. Let's try to do it my way. And I'm like, okay. So I began to put on my calendar moments of sitting still and just breathing and with my notebook and focusing on God. Focusing on whatever thoughts came to mind. I just jot things down and I tracked it. I did that some every day for a whole year. And that was the year the Vibrant Living grew more than any other year. And so being still is not idle. It's actually getting intimate with God, which causes growth. And so to me, getting still, that's what it means to me. The other thing that I teach a lot is I call it developing our imagination. Remember, I talked about surviving. So we're not thinking about very far down the road. And it's unfortunate that a lot of us don't think about what do I want the next 5 years to look like? What do I want? Where do I want to be 5 years from now? So using your imagination, which is really faith, imagination could be used in equal with faith because we imagine the worst happening all the time. And they call that worry, but it's really faith in the negative. And so we imagine, I suppose you probably have kids when the teenagers don't come home when they say they were going to be, we picture all kinds of things that are not positive. And so begin to use your imagination in the positive and listen to your spirit, listen to your intuition, and begin to develop the life you want. I walk people step by step through this in the program, but get an imagination journal. I think I'm going to create one because I keep talking about one, but get an imagination journal and write down, what would I love? And then begin to act as if it's already so. So I have a dollar figure that I want to have it coming in for revenue for the ministry. And the reason is because that means that many more people are being touched with it all. So the question is if that's what you want, why don't you act like that's so today, and you make different choices? You make different choices than if you are afraid that you're not going to make your budget. If you're living from the place of faith, you make different choices. So those are some thoughts around imagination and stillness.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I know another subject matter that you explore is choosing joy. And so I'd love you to talk about that, but I'd like you to define joy first. What does that mean?
Joy is not equal to happiness. Joy is choosing to see the good in situations and being fully present. One of the biggest stealers of joy is not being present, enjoying what we have today. It's worrying about the future or fearing the past will repeat itself. So joy is a fruit of the Spirit, and it is something that we all have, but we have to choose it, because you can't watch the news. You can't turn on the TV. You can't do a radio. You can't even, it's like social media. It's like everywhere you go, there's fear. And so learning that choosing joy is a choice, and I have to do it on purpose. I developed this program to help people in every stage of life, but specifically those that are dealing with anxious thoughts or depressive thoughts. And I have worked at co-laboring with people who are seeing medical professionals as well. But medical professionals, if I can be so bold, simply cover the symptoms. They give you medication to mask what's going on, and you don't. And that's another thing, was I can pretend I'm okay and I'm really not. And so learning to really figure out what's going on. One of the stories I say is the first thing I have to do in any of this is be honest with where I am on my own map. And what I mean by that is I tell a story of a guy who was taking a trip to Chicago back in the days before GPS, and he was running late. He had a super important sales meeting, and he was wondering if he would get it. He shows up at the airport, and he's running to get his suitcase and runs to the car rental place and starts to leave. And he goes, "Oh, I need a map." And he grabs a map off the counter and runs out the door, and he's trying to find the address for this important sales meeting, and he can't. He opens the map all the way, and it was a map of Detroit. And a lot of times that's the way we're living our life. We're trying to figure out where we are from a place I'm not. And I can't figure out how to get to where I want to be until I can really own where I am. And sometimes that's hard and hurts. And it's painful at times, but I need to begin to really be honest with myself so that I can change the situation.
Man, yeah, I love that. Deep. And I'm sure you discuss a lot of that. We haven't given you the platform, and I know your book came out in 2019. Again, the title of it, From Frazzled to Freedom. So much of this stuff, I'm sure, is part of it, but I'll let you give it a quick plug and maybe share some insight and share from your perspective. First of all, how was it writing a book, and then what you learned from it, and perhaps what the readers get out of it.
Well, I have a new one. It was released earlier this year, and that's really the latest information. So if I could share that one.
Yeah, because I didn't see that. I looked. What's the title of it?
It is called An Umbrella on a Sunny Day. And the thought behind it is how, when things are going well, I'm still expecting it's going to rain. We're always expecting the other shoe to drop, if you will. And in this book, I share the story a little bit more in depth of what I shared here, and then other things that I have learned over time, some other tools and things that people can use to enjoy the sunshine and not expect it to rain every time things are going well. And so that is what that book is about. And it's free too on my website. Nice.
Well, definitely, man, I missed that looking up. So thank you so much for sharing that again on Donna's website. And we'll go over these again, but an umbrella on a sunny day. I love that. Way we're just about wrapping this baby up. I want to be mindful of your time, but I love asking this question toward the end of the show. And it's like, what legacy do you want to leave? And I use a quote by John Alston. The only thing you take with you when you're gone is what you leave behind. What is it you want your family, your kids, your grandbabies, and the women who you've served to feel? And what would you want to hear if you're on your deathbed and they're all surrounded, you're surrounded by them? What do you want to leave behind?
One of the biggest things is my daughter recently gave me a card. It was for Christmas. And she said, for the woman who always helps us believe in miracles. And that's the legacy. Is I want them to say that she believed in things that she couldn't see, that she worked, she acted and lived her life on the basis of what God has promised, not what on the basis of circumstances. So that's what I want. And I want people to learn how to live from where they were really created so that they can live to their fullest potential and know that they were designed for greatness.
Again, see how she's throwing that out there, Pasha? That's the name of Donna's podcast. You were designed for greatness, so make sure you check that out. Again, we've been speaking with Donna Tashjian coming from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Again, she has an amazing nonprofit called I Vibrant Living, and it's I guess that's just your website because it's Vibrant Living. But her website is iVibrantLiving.com. And if you want to reach out to join her Facebook group, any of the other offerings that we've talked about, just you can go to her website, which I just shared, or you can email her at Donna@iVibrantLiving.com. Donna, it has been our pleasure to have you on as our guest. And man, I got 3 pages of notes that I took down. You've helped me. I tell Mike all the time that our goal in starting this podcast, one, was just for us to connect. We're college roommates, and through the pandemic, we wanted to be able to see each other and hang out more and then try and do some good work. But that one person that's always been helped has been me. And so you've really given me some tools to add to my life to help me focus on my life's essential ingredients. And for that, I'm forever grateful. And thank you so much. Pashito, you want to get us out of here?
Yeah, Donna, thank you. I'm also a basketball coach, and you've inspired me to go to try to be great and tell my kids they can be great too. Thank you so much. And also want to thank you for the price of your new book. That's Jeff's favorite number, free. I'm sure he's going to get a couple copies of it. But thank you for being on the show and really appreciate it, Donna. Thank you very much.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you both.
All right. And that's another episode of Life's Essential Ingredients. And Pasho, boom, baby, that just happened.